The history of the media in Uganda goes back from the late 1900s with a church missionary society publication called Mengo Notes. Later, a number of other publications, most of them in Uganda like Muno, would be launched, as would be the colonial government newspaper, the Uganda August. Radio Uganda and Uganda Television were established in 1954 and 1963 respectively. In the early years, Uganda's media was almost entirely government-owned, and this meant government wielded a lot of influence over what got published or broadcast. Benibera Irakut was one of the editors of the government-owned People's newspaper in the 1970s, and he recalls the challenges of being a journalist during Amin's regime.
I was editor-in-chief from 1968. Those days we used typewriters, and then there are other people who would use machines, all printers, after the Second World War.
Politics was changing, so the media landscape was changing because the politics had a direct impact on the media. For example, in 1968, Rajat Nyogi gets jailed, who was the founder and editor of Transition. But also in the 60s, especially in the latter half, we see the deportation. A couple of journalists were deported by Milton Obote's government.
When the NRM government came into power in 1986, the media space was gradually opened up, culminating in the establishment of private media houses at the beginning of the 1990s. Currently, the Uganda Communication Commission has registered tremendous growth, especially in the electronic media.
When people are communicating, you hear them talking about over 290 radio stations. So we have hit the 300 mark. We have always talked about the access to information and communication in the country. So you will find that with 100% coverage of radio in this country at district level, we have achieved an aspect of access.
Sanyo FM was the first, then Capital and many others. Newspapers, you had New Vision, Weekly Topic, later the Monitor came.
Daniel Kalinaki is a general manager editorial for the National Media Group in Uganda. He started his journalism career in the early 2000s, and he agrees that the media industry in Uganda has had a paradigm shift from being state-controlled to one that is largely private-owned.
We're seeing a lot more community-based media houses, so people have their local news from their areas, which I think is very useful because they get a lot more of things that affect them.
When the recent rise and emerging trend of social media and technological growth of the digital media practitioners need not remain stagnant.
We need to start thinking about the consumer beyond the platform. So if people want their news on their mobile phone, if they want to listen to the news in a podcast, you need to be able to give them the news when they want it, news that is relevant to them, and find a way of getting them to pay for it, because it's not going to pay for itself.
Karina Kantabaire, however, believe that traditional media and newspaper, TV and radio will still remain the main source of factual and balanced news on which the public can depend.
Do the right journalism, do the good journalism, explain, provide context. You want to be, mainstream media will have to continue positioning itself as the space where people go to find unbiased news.
Though government is quick to attribute this to the current regime, the state remains a major violator of media freedoms.
It's been generally a good time, but at the same time, while in the 1970s journalists were being killed, and I'm saying they haven't quite been killed, let's put it that way, but the harassment has been consistent.
However, Kalinaki advises young media practitioners on how they can remain relevant in the digital era.
You can do things on your mobile phone. You can produce journalism or content in very many different ways, in video, in podcasts, in text. You can be your own broadcaster on YouTube. What they need to do is, of course, skill themselves.
Jingo Francis, NTV.